Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a Wealth KC short take here. Will and I discussing one item, getting our raw opinions. I saw this the other day from Fortune. How many households have a $1 million net worth? So I think it's fair to just remind everyone what net worth means, which is the value of all of your assets minus the value of all of your liabilities. Leaves you with your net worth, the number one thing you can look at with your finances. And as this shows, how many households have a $1 million net worth at the end of 2024? It was 1 out of every 6 households has a $1 million net worth. Just looking for what you think about that stat today, Will.
Well, it's obviously a positive, right? I mean, we're increasing the wealth of our country, whether that be, by whatever means that has happened. It has happened, and that's a net positive, I think, for the economy as a whole and our country as a whole, obviously lifting the standard of living as well. It does have something to do with just kind of ballooning asset values of all kinds. You think housing, not necessarily bubble, but the housing increase of 2020 to 2023, after COVID, as well as what has happened with the stock market over the last, couple of years, 5 years, call it. But it is interesting to note. I think also something that I would say is, now what is the value of $1 million, right? When you look at this chart, obviously inflation has played a role in how much a million can actually get you, now versus you look at even in 2000, right? I mean, it went a lot longer than it does now in terms of purchasing power. So overall positive, but definitely have to keep in mind what impact inflation has on these numbers as well.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is, I think there's it's really easy to say the term millionaire, right? And it doesn't sound funny to say, oh, I'm a 2 millionaire or I'm a 4 millionaire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the next word is a billion, which is, not one we're going to be using, right? So I think people are still stuck, as you mentioned, this idea that $1 million is a really big deal. And don't get me wrong, if you are 50, 55, 60 or older and you're one of these households, you've done well. Like having $1 million net worth is a big deal. If you are below 50 for sure, you've got to start rewiring your brain on what the term millionaire means, or what, how much is $1 million. It's just, not what it used to be. It's not even what it was 5 years ago, pre-COVID, right? With the amount of inflation we've seen and the amount of money printing we've had, it's changed drastically in just the last 5 years. So I think, people are struggling with what that means. And, go ahead.
I think people do forget, or maybe just not even realize, that inflation compounds as well, right? So if you see that chart right in front of us, right, that is an exponential graph, right? And that is not going to slow down. So, that is going to continue to increase, and it's going to increase at a faster rate, right? So it's going to be, more millionaires, but what comes with that is, a million doesn't go as far as it used to. And, now we're going to kind of get into, the numbers are so big, right? The rate is going to stay constant and not an issue, but the numbers are so big though that, 10% inflation over the next 5 years on $1 million, is $100,000. So you just take that and continue, and the numbers just get really, really big. And it's kind of crazy to see, but important to keep in mind that inflation is exponential as well.
Yeah, this was my chart, so I was able to do a little homework before the video, and I using 2024, the end of 2024 as my bogey. I was like, man, how hard would it have been to get there over the last 30 years, right? If you're 65 right now, looking to retire, and you started when you were 35, right? Started saving, go back 30 years. I just want your opinion on this. How difficult is it, or was it, over the last 30 years to get to $1 million net worth? Now I'm making some, adjustments here, or some liberties of information, but
Right.
if you purchased the median home in January of 1995, okay, so going back 30 years, you purchased the median home of $127,900. Okay, so right around 130 grand was the median home, and you held on to that home for 30 years, right? The average home in December of 24 was worth 335,000. Okay, so just holding that home for 30 years, that home is now worth 335,000, literally a third of the way to the $1 million net worth. Now, you also would have paid off your mortgage over that 30 years, right? So you'd have no debt. So you're a third of the way to the million with no debt. So how do we get the other 2/3 of a million? I went back and used the S&P 500, and I understand I'm using a 100% stock portfolio, right, with no drag on fees or market timing or anything like that. But just looking at it, if you would have invested $200 a month starting in January 1995 in the S&P 500 and increased those contributions by just 3% a year with inflation, you would get to $607,800 in investments. Add that to your 335 median home value, and you'd be at $942,800, about 950 grand, only 50 grand away from that $1 million bogey.
Right.
So 200 a month adjusted for inflation. I know we went back to 1995. $200 is a lot different than it was now, but I found that to just be, you'd have to be consistent. It's not easy, but just what are your thoughts on just $200 a month adjusted for inflation for 30 years? You'd be there.
I think it's motivating. I think now with especially the young investors that we work with, they're more motivated to, and they understand the importance of investing a large portion of their income for the future. So I think it's personally, motivating. I mean, it motivates me to, work harder and be able to invest more, and allows me to look to the future a little bit more and say, hey, if I just stay consistent with this and invest enough, that there'll be plenty there in the future for me and my family. So it's interesting to do this math backwards, like you said. It's easy to kind of look. In hindsight's always 2020, right? But consistency in whatever you do pays off in the long run, and especially in investing, it can pay off really, really heavily for you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that optimistic view. That's why I enjoy working with you. The other thing is, you were saying that I kind of changed my perspective on it a little bit. I didn't even think of this prior to you just saying that. Let's also simplify the investing process, right? In today's world, everyone has those little devices at their fingertips where you can trade stocks, bonds, options, cryptocurrencies, you name it, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. What I'm trying to say is, you do not have to overcomplicate this process, to get you where you want to go. So don't be afraid of being diversified in how you save and what you invest in. No problems continuing to do some of those alternative investments, but don't ignore Old Faithful here and what it might be able to do for you over a 30-year period. So good stuff, Will. Anything else?
Nope.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Everyone, give us a comment if you have anything we'd like to cover for you. We'd be happy to do it. We appreciate you taking the time, and hope you have a great rest of your week.